looked at mood, grip strength and Stroop performance last week, and the question was, does mood influence how much work you do? And in other words, how strong you can move the grip strength test and how quickly you can find the numbers, symbols in the Stroop test. What is mood? Mood and emotion, tricky concepts really. That we've got two words which different but largely describe very similar things. We know that mood influences how we think and how we feel. We know that on some days everything just feels really difficult, on other days everything feels really, really easy. And researchers have gone into looking at why that might be the case. And one researcher called Yuri Hanin, a Russian who is now based in Finland, who presented at Wolverhampton in 2006, talks about emotions giving energy. So certain emotional states seem to be functional for what you want to do, in other words, give you enough energy for doing the task, and other emotional states are dysfunctional and seem to take away energy from doing the task. And Yuri Hanin would say that's very individualised, and that some people perform at their best when they're feeling very excited and very happy. He would also say that other people would perform at their best when they're feeling anxious or a little bit sad, and the idea that some people can get motivated by these emotions because they act as a warning signal that if they don't perform really well, the intensity of such emotions will just get worse, so they're avoiding much worse scenarios. So that's a sort of theoretical in a really, really short nutshell of the theory we're looking at. So what we got people to do was to complete a questionnaire which I developed with colleagues for my PhD over several years, and as I said in the lecture, I started as a data collector for my wife's master's thesis back in 1993. 1993 when she started it. 1993, most of you are still watching Thomas the Tank Engine, I suppose. Being wooed by the Fat Controller, but we were out there on the London Youth Games collecting these mood questionnaires, just having a look what 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 14-year-olds were feeling, and getting them to complete this questionnaire. And we got around about 600 people doing it, and then I did it my PhD with adults and school children. And so we have a reasonable idea what this questionnaire is all about, and did lots and lots of work trying to validate it, which is really getting it, you're not going to believe this, really getting excited about getting in some really jazzy stats such as structural equation modelling, which tests whether the theory that these mood states such as tension, the 4 items, panicky, worried, anxious, nervous, load together, relate with each other, and they make a factor called tension, whether that works in all different scenarios, and it did just appeared to hold up. So they all completed that. Then you did the Stroop test, the grip strength test, which is pull as hard as you can on a grip strength dynamometer, and then you did the Stroop test, which was all about finding colours and symbols, and they're all mixed up, and it's quite confusing. You have to really concentrate on what you're doing, and it can trip you up just as how well you're going to do. And you did that twice, so we know who improved from test 1, from test 2, from test 1 in both tests. So we know some people improved a lot and other people improved not a lot, and the idea is that what we're looking at is maybe the mood states could predict who improved their performance the most. But what we're going to look at is some of the numbers now. The means and standard deviations for the mood scores from 38 kind students who completed the questionnaire and took part in the grip strength and Stroop test. Well done, and well done for sitting through the seminar. You did look a wee bit tired during that, but the fatigue scores don't show that. So let's look at the scores. We've got the mood scores of that. If I had been truly boring and tiring, they might have been worse than what they are. So look at tension. We have 38 people. Minimum of 0, because that's not at all for every item. Maximum of a possible of 16. That's 4 for every item. 4 items in each scale. and that's the same number of items in every scale. So 0 to 6 is our range of tension, and that's not that high, is it? Another load of higher scores to come. Average of 1.42. What that means, we look to the norms from the Brunel user guide, which Peter Terry produced, is that you are slightly lower on tension than the average, but only just, not a lot. And when the standard deviation of 1.55, that says 68% of people, because one standard deviation is 34% of people one side, 34% of people the other side of a normal distribution curve, so that most people are very, very close to the average score from the large population set of norms that developed. And that's the same for depression, slightly lower, but very close. The same for fatigue. So if you look at fatigue score of 4.47, you think, gosh, you're a bit tired. That is actually quite normal for a student. Most students are actually a bit higher than that. So well done for that. But the other side to that is that you're also lower on vigour, and most students are around about 6 for vigour, so you're slightly low for that, but not hugely at all. So they're around about average sets of scores, and we have we have average scores for confusion and anger. So we've got a group of 38 people, and you are very similar to a group of 600 or so others who collected the norms from several years ago. So be pleased that you feel normal. You're all individuals, of course, that's completely true, but your mood scores are normal, and that may be a consequence of your environment. We were then interested with whether someone had improved their grip strength, so we did a paired samples t-test to examine the differences, and we were also interested in whether they'd got faster at the Stroop test. So we did a paired samples t-test there. That's 2 pairs of t-tests. Have 2 t-tests, please. Have 2 pairs of t-tests, thank you very much. Yes, well, here they are. They're all in SPSS, and they're on special offer that day. So we got some lovely pair of t-tests all ready to do our stats with. So that's what we did. And what we can see that the grip strength 1 is 44.632. We don't need all those decimal places really. It's about 44 because the machine's not that accurate. And it's gone up to 45. So you have tried harder, it would seem, to get a better score. The standard deviations are around about the same, around about 10 and a bit. So there's a normal sort of range in scores. If it had been really tight at the start, really small standard deviation in one and really big standard deviation in the other, it might suggest some people have really tried super hard on the second go or not tried at all, big range in scores. But it says you're similar scores, so that's quite nice to see for many reasons. Because we wouldn't expect any one set of people to try much harder than the others. Then the Stroop test, similar sorts of description. We have 24 at the start, which 24 seconds, that is 24 and a half seconds, down to 22, only 2.5 seconds again to be precise. So you got quicker. Well done for getting quicker. That I won't tell you what my score is that, but it's not so much time in seconds, but more of a date. And the standard deviation is around about 5. So you've got better at that, and you've got better at the grip test. The grip test. We want to know whether you're statistically significantly better at that. Just before we get to that test, because I know the build-up for doing a stats test is actually quite intense, and the emotions that people go through, just the excitement of knowing whether it's significant or not, it's a bit like waiting for Christmas. It is for me anyway. So grips, this is the correlation. Did people who scored well on the first test tend to score well on the second test? Did people who got a fast time on the first one also tend to get a fast time on the second one? So this is the correlation. Correlations, as you know, go from -1, negative correlation, to +1, positive correlation. So as grip test scores go up, the grip test scores on the second test also go up. At 0.939, it says yes, they do. So that's very good. Similar trend of relationship to the Stroop test. In other words, people who scored well on the first one also scored well on the second one. So it does suggest that no one group or no few people within that group were performing very differently over the two trials. So our next test is whether there's significantly difference. This is the exciting bit. And what we find is for the grip strength, although it's a difference, T is minus 0.106. The minus is simply the order which they've gone in. So it's 1, score of 1. And the p-value, two tails significance, two tails, means it could be positive or negative, is 0.293. And as we know, or we have to check back to know, if we remind ourselves that that figure has to be lower than 0.05. 0.05 is a number that stats people came up with to call significance. There's nothing magic about it as such, but it has to be lower than 0.05. And 0.29 is of course bigger than 0.05. I know some of you are staring at that screen, not quite sure what how to interpret that, but that's what it means. But excitingly, and I say exciting, the Stroop test is a mean score of 3.45 with a p-value, two-tail significance, of 0.001, which of course is much lower than 0.05. So the Stroop test scores have significantly improved. You've got much faster. So that's the story from that one. Our next question is whether they relate to our emotional state. Now we are looking, and some people find this exceptionally exciting. When I say some people find this sort of stuff exceptionally exciting, I am actually referring to me. So I'm talking about myself in plural, because I am, I think, possibly the only person who. Well, no, that's a gross understatement to just how interesting stats are. Lots of people find stats really interesting. I just have to search them out a bit more. I usually find them at academic conferences. And students, undergraduate students particularly, are not so keen on stats until they get the hang of it, and then they get really keen on it, and they have been. So I'm not a lone liker of stats. There are many people who do like stats, and they have a really good function. We are testing the hypothesis that mood states, as assessed by the Brunel mood scale, will correlate with improvements in performance. And what we have found is that we have two correlations which are not statistically significant. So we're not. There's no fanfare being played, and we're not looking for great accolades for groundbreaking research. We've only got 38 people, and I'll talk about that in a second, because stats really do work much better when you've got lots and lots of people in there for testing p-values, because p-values tend to become lower the more people you put in. So, but what we found is tension. As tension scores went up, the difference in grip strength went down. So those people who were really quite tense tended not to improve their scores a great deal. Those people who were low in tension tended to get a bigger score. So being tense didn't seem to be very functional in this instance. But now, let's not get too excited about that result in terms of saying, oh, we need to start looking at reducing tension, because when we look at the mean scores from the group, we find that they were not overly high in tension to begin with. So around about average tension wasn't that functional for grip strength performance in this instance, and there weren't really high scores in tension. So it's an interesting observation. It's not groundbreaking. It's what we might expect, but it bears it out with a -2%, -0.2 correlation, and you find the percentage explained on grip strength differences by timesing that R value by itself. So -0.2 times -0.2. So there's only 4% of the relationship between tension and grip strength, which is common. So not a strong relationship that much. Stroop test differences. In other words, did people improve? The more vigorous you were, the greater your difference. So feeling vigorous, feeling alert, feeling energetic did seem to have some relationship with scoring better on the second Stroop test, which is interesting because it's the idea that you held some resources to perform better on what was the final test of doing 4 tests in a row, and that might be quite an interesting observation for those people who are looking at self-control from a physiological point of view, the idea that self-control uses resources, and so therefore what this might just be showing is that those people in the right sort of mood can actually hold a consistent performance for much longer, because the Stroop test requires self-control. The summary of all this, if you're still awake, and I admit that that was quite a long explanation of only a few numbers, is that feeling vigorous and not feeling that tense seems to be beneficial for those 2 performances. The other correlations are really quite low, around about 0.1 or 0, and so they're not really worth commenting on because they're so weak correlations. As I said, you've only got 38 people, and stats work best when you've got thousands and thousands, because it evens out any sort of odd scores, and so you can be more confident in your results. So, what have we found? We've found that there are some relationships between mood and performance, but they are quite weak. We've found that people have improved their Stroop test performance over time, and that's really good. And that's a worthwhile thing for people who did improve your scores. Well done. Grip strength improved, but not significantly. So there's some changes there. We probably would expect that. The experiment itself was relatively quick to do, and we've got from an idea to some results really quickly. We've got standardised responses. We know you're in a normal mood state in comparison to the normal student population, in which we collected the norms from. So, as a short exercise in doing some research to test some ideas, it seems to hold out largely as we expected to. I don't think anyone was overly put out by this in terms of it didn't take that much time, and you hopefully gain some insight into just how a project can be conducted. I hope you found that interesting. So that is goodbye from me for now.